Something really strange is happening with Ontario's public colleges. We're seeing successful, in-demand programs shutting down and thousands of jobs just vanishing. On the surface, it makes absolutely no sense. But that's until you start to follow the money. And that is exactly what we are going to do today.
First, let's just let the scale of this sink in. We are talking about 10,000 jobs lost. 10,000. These aren't just numbers. These are the faculty, the support staff, the people who are the very backbone of our province's entire workforce training system.
And it's not just the jobs, it's the programs themselves. We're talking about hundreds of programs that were proven to work, that were directly responding to what the job market needs, and they've just been closed. These are the exact courses meant to fill skills gaps and give people a path to a good career. So this brings us to the big central question, right? If these programs are so successful and so needed, why on earth are they being taken apart? And this is where the story gets really weird. I mean, just look at what happened out in Eastern Ontario. Loyalist College had this culinary program with 100% employer satisfaction. Boom, it got shut down. St. Lawrence College closed its hospitality program even though there was a massive shortage of workers in the region. But at the same time, a private training company in the Toronto area, Scale Hospitality, got over $11 million in public money with no public reporting on how many people actually ended up with a job. That contrast right there gets to be very heart of this. To really get what's going on, we have to ask a pretty simple question. Where are our taxpayer dollars for skills training actually going? Well, the first clue is in how the province funds these colleges. And frankly, it's shocking. While other provinces cover, on average, about 60% of a college's operating costs, Ontario, we cover a mere 25%. This has basically forced our colleges to depend heavily on other things like international student tuition just to keep the lights on. So get this. While our public colleges were being starved of funds, something else was going on in the background. A new, totally separate fund for private sector training, which was just created in 2020, saw its budget explode by 800%. It was like they were building a whole parallel privatized system to compete directly with the colleges for money. This new system has a name. It's called the Skills Development Fund, or SDF for short. And you'll hear it described as a black box, and for good reason. Trying to figure out where all the money's going and what it's actually achieving is incredibly difficult. And the amount of money we're talking about here is just staggering. By 2025, $2.5 billion will have been spent or committed to this one fund. Now, to put that into perspective, the government's own expert panel said that just a fraction of that amount was needed to make the entire public college system financially stable again. And here is the absolute crucial difference: accountability. Our public colleges have to follow really strict public reporting rules. We know their completion rates, their graduate employment rates, all of it. But the SDF, there's basically no public disclosure. We don't get to see which projects are funded, what they're supposed to do, or what the real outcomes are. Instead of hard data, we just get press releases and nice-sounding anecdotes. So when there's such a lack of transparency, you have to ask the next logical question, right? If the process isn't public, who are the big winners? Who's getting these massive grants with so little oversight? Well, the list of recipients includes a lot of big private companies. Remember Scale Hospitality? They got that $11.1 million. Agnico Eagle Mines got a $10 million grant. Ontario Shipyards, another $10 million. I mean, a single one of these grants is large enough to fund a small public college for a whole year. This really forces us to ask a critical question. Are these multi-million-dollar funding decisions being driven by real, genuine needs in the job market? Or is there something else going on? Like, say, lobbying? So let's go back to Scale Hospitality for a second. In November of 2022, they hired a lobbyist from a firm called Atlas Strategic Advisors. Over the next 2 years, they got 2 SDF grants, totaling over $11 million. And their lobbying contract? It ended in February 2025. The timing, well, it's pretty interesting. And who founded that lobbying firm, Atlas Strategic Advisors? A man named Amin Masoudi. You might recognize the name. He was Premier Doug Ford's former principal secretary and also happened to be the chair of his successful 2022 election campaign. Now look, this isn't just speculation. In 2025, Ontario's Independent Auditor General released a special report on the Skills Development Fund, and let me tell you, the findings were absolutely explosive. The Auditor General's main conclusion was incredibly blunt. Quote, "The selection process was not fair, transparent, or accountable." I mean, that is just a stunningly direct criticism of how this multi-billion-dollar fund was being run.
And the audit shows us exactly how this happened. So the government's own nonpartisan ministry staff would evaluate and rank all the applications, but the final say was made by the minister's office. And what did they choose? More than half the time, 54% of the time, they decided to fund projects their own experts had ranked as medium, low, or even poor. Those lower-ranked projects got a staggering $742 million. And the details just get more and more concerning. The audit found that 670 applications that ministry staff ranked as high were just rejected. It also found that 64 applicants who were ranked lower but who had hired lobbyists received $126 million. And for the first 2 rounds of funding, we're talking almost $500 million. The minister's office gave zero documented reason for its choices. None. And this has real-world consequences. It's not just about process. The Auditor General actually analyzed how the funded projects performed. And the high-ranked projects, the ones that were so often rejected, they were way more successful. They got more people to participate, more people to finish the training, and most importantly, they got more people jobs. The government's decision to fund these lower-ranked projects led to objectively worse results for the people of Ontario. So, after all of that, it really all comes down to this. Ontario is facing a choice. On one side, we have a publicly funded, publicly accountable college system that has been the backbone of our skills training for decades. And on the other, we have a multi-billion-dollar private fund with very little transparency, a questionable selection process, and provably worse outcomes. The question for all of us is, which system is truly building Ontario's future?